Hey guys, this is Alex189, and I'm here today with a few good friends of mine. It's RTiger, Napoleon, and Angeh, and the four of us plus Psycho and Seb ABTF made up the high command team of Miller during the 2015 tournament. And we're here to talk to you guys today about kind of what went on behind the scenes that you guys never saw on the likes of Reddit, and the documents were never actually shared in the process behind making them. So welcome to the PSP TeamSpeak, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah. This, for anyone that doesn't know, this is a little bit awkward to do because we've actually known each other a long time. So, we know the result of the tournament, guys. We won. So what we'll do, we'll start off by looking way back in the past before the tournament. Let's go way back to last year. What would you guys say is the biggest difference between the tournament in 2014 and 2015? What changed over the course of that time?
I think main difference, although we had changing the way we do things with command, is the attitude of the outfits. When we took over after the merger last year, it was very much Miller didn't take it that seriously. They wanted to treat it as like a fun day out if we win. So well done. If we don't win, we've all had fun, sort of thing. And people, the whole selection process kind of showed that. We basically randomized selection. People didn't get a chance to play with each other that all the time, and it was kind of very inclusive, but not very dedicated to win the tournament. And the tournament went as planned. It went pretty disastrously. And after the tournament, we had people like, well, that wasn't very good, and people didn't want to play if it was going to be so lackadaisical approach to going to it. So we sat down and we basically, the outfits started to come around into the fact that they wanted to win, not just turn up. And the selection methods gradually got more and more competitive, and a lot of the outfits came back in, and the attitude started to come back in. We want to win, we prepare better. We learn from our mistakes, and we went from a let's take part mindset to a let's win this mindset. It took a year, but transformation was pretty drastic.
I think as well, over the course of the makeup of the sort of outfits interested in Service Smash and that, it's changed a lot. So whereas last year the balance of power was generally, if you want to put it like that, weighted towards people that wanted to be more inclusive and not so selective. And I think by the time we got around to the tournament this year, what's left of the outfits who are interested in playing was more of like the hardened core that wanted to go out and win and wanted to put the time and effort to get there. And I think as well, that sort of change was probably what led to a lot of the internal drama before the tournament, when people were trying to decide how are we going to approach this, how are we going to select the teams. And in the past, the balance has always been more people wanted to randomize the teams rather than start designing them in a sense so that there's a proper structure to them. And
I think we always realized that the randomization was a bad approach, but no one could ever agree on a better approach, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and
it was always it was the least objectionable way of doing it.
Yeah, and then by time of this tournament, I'd say opinions have changed, or there were less people to sort of back up the randomization thing. So even though people were still arguing that randomization is more inclusive or fair, the balance of power had sort of shifted ever so marginally into the favor of we need to start selecting our teams regardless of sort of how we approach the tournaments. We need to design the teams so that there's some structure to them and that there's some leadership to them. And I think when we were voting on this, there was heated words occasionally exchanged, but people people in the end, I think there's something like a 60 or 65% margin, maybe even slightly less, of people in favour of selecting the teams, and that, I think, finally just nudged us over the edge.
Yeah, I quite like what Angeh put in the chat there. A lot of it, and I think he's kind of right. A lot of it was driven, I think, by self-preservation of some outfits that, I was in that boat as well. It's like some outfits knew that they probably wouldn't get a slot. That was like, 'cause I remember I was like, regrettably, I want to say I was a bit of a catalyst for it at the time in the whole, because it was casual side, elite side, wasn't it? It was like I was kind of leaning towards the casual side of it, and self-preservation for me was kind of there, even though if it was going to be force commander picks, I probably would have been one of the ones picking the teams.
Yeah, as Angie said in the chat.
For me, I've got an interesting perspective because I've basically been within Miller Command since we started doing Seven Smash, and I think going from the randomization of platoons and everything, that the tournament last year was just every match was, we had 2 weeks to prepare for the match. After the last match, you would have maybe realistically a week before the match to actually practice with your platoon. And every time you played a match, you didn't know who you were going to be playing with, and that just burnt out the command team. It burnt out the platoons, and it meant no one could really develop any level of consistency. And I think that was the biggest thing we realized post tournament. That even though we weren't losing horrifically in any games, but we were making lots of mistakes because of the fact that we just didn't know how to play with each other properly. So post tournament, we introduced the platoon system. That way, in all the matches, you sign up as a platoon. So you don't sign up as individual units. You sign up as a platoon, and the idea being that you practice, you get to know each other. So you're bringing a cohesive unit to a game and trying to bring consistency into our games. And I think the platoon system wasn't ever going to work in a tournament setting. But what it did is it gave us a really good start, where we could start kind of being more consistent, having a more stable platform.
Kind of like a middle ground between full selection and fair selection.
And then for the tournament, what I wanted to drive forward in the tournament, and what we ended up getting was a system where where we could basically say, okay, I know a match in advance who's going to be playing, so that everyone knows what's happening in advance and they've got plenty of time to prepare. We had our Connery roster done a month before the match, and for me, I think that was one of the big things that was the change from 2014 to 2015. We were all prepared. We all knew who we were playing with. We played with each other beforehand. The platoon leaders knew what they were doing, and so we were just a lot more consistent, and it was a much better kind of environment to play in and be part of.
From my point of view, one of the big change is the fact that we basically, if you ignore the Cobalt game, we basically have more or less the same platoon leaders every game. And I felt that as a big going forward, that's a really good positive step, because last time, you should chop and change it. Platoon leaders didn't get a chance to know each other. Whereas now, you had the same platoon leaders pretty much every game. Arguably the best platoon leaders in the game. So some definitely were, and they got used to talking to each other and working together, and it basically made things a lot smoother. Because if you got to run things to command, like RTiger, and then back to the platoon leader, you lose time. Whereas they got used to making decisions for each other, like saying, okay, I need some forces here, can you help me? And they do it almost without being asked to do it. So it's like opportunities to take bases or defend bases were being taken a lot better, and there's a lot more teamwork at platoon level, which is ultimately how you want to do it. The force commander ultimately shouldn't have to do loads of work. He should be there to make the big calls, but the platoon leaders should do a lot of the work for him, and a lot of the defending and attacking lanes.
I remember speaking to Napoleon and RTiger. It was just after the Connery game, I sat in a channel and just kind of listening to the meetings like I've done all tournament, and That was quite funny. It made me laugh a bit when Napoleon said he just did absolutely nothing during the Connery game. He just kind of sat there, looked at the map, and started farming. I thought that was brilliant.
I think that's the thing. I think like when the team's playing well and the platoon leaders are doing well, the force commander doesn't necessarily have a whole lot to do. Like the platoon leaders can kind of see what's going on in the area, and the force commander sees the whole picture, so he can see over the whole map what's happening. And he can basically switch people out when he needs to. But if you're fighting, let's say, around the center area, for example, last game with Desper and Norrington, they're not necessarily they know what's going on their area, but they don't know what's going on the west lane. But they have a better idea of what's going on in the center than Tiger does. So it makes sense to give them more responsibility to coordinate. Whereas at the first one, I say, okay, I need Desper, you need to go here on the west lane quickly and help. It's very hard to basically pull yourself out of the battle in your area and look at the whole picture.
So yeah, I think that kind of covers maybe the sort of slight run up to the tournament.
The big differences between 2014 2015, I think it was a Briggs game on Eszemir, wasn't it? That was like the big time we tried it out.
Yeah, that was probably the other big difference. I think the game on Eszemir against Emerald earlier in the year, it was a very big experiment, and so even though that game was a loss, it was a very, very valuable lesson for us, and we learned a lot from it. And I think that was the point where we sort of realized we've got too many sort of specialist platoons, if you will, whether that be sort of QRF or sort of harassment platoons and so on. There's too many forces that weren't committed to pushing a lane, and they're just continuously moving about all the time. And then in the case of the QRF, they'd spend half the game not actually fighting but just traveling between bases. And when you think that's like at least sort of 2 squads of manpower, that's a big lack of manpower in areas of the map. And so Farah decided for the test game against Briggs on Eszemir that he was going to try see if he could adapt the sort of Emerald meta, the Emerald playstyle for Miller, and see what it went like. So we didn't completely kill QRF in that game. We still had 1 QRF unit, but we worked down from it, and we found in the Briggs game everything just went very, very well. It was probably an example for us as to what happens when we got like a good solid platoon leadership team, and in some respects I think a lot of those platoon leaders stayed on for the tournament, and so from that point on I think it was clear to us that there's really something Emerald they're doing that's working out very well. And we started taking a very, very close eye to sort of Emerald's games, looking at their sort of force structures or what we could glean from it and how they approached it. And gradually over the tournament, I think we very much honed that into something for ourselves.
I think it's you've got to look at it as well. Like, all the matches before the tournament in 2015, we were trying something new. So whether that was the game on against Cobalt on Amrish, or if it was the game against Emerald on Eszemir, that was the big experiment, I think, in my eyes, where we attempted to say, okay, we know Emerald use very few QRFs, they use distributed platoons and different things like this, and we knew how Emerald played. We were saying, and for me that was the test of, is there another way of playing this game successfully that isn't using that technique? We tried it on Eszemir against Emerald, and we did a fairly good job, but that wasn't because of the way we'd structured our forces, and eventually that caused us to lose that game. So I think that was again the thing where we said, okay, actually, let's structure our units like Emerald does. I think it does us a disservice to say that we just flat out copied Emerald. Yeah, we used a lot of Emerald's structure in terms of the way they structure their forces, the number of platoons they use, and so on. But yeah, it's building squad comp. All of the background workings, all of the way we our comm structures, the way we organize our platoons, the way we select our platoons, the way our air force integrates with our ground forces. That's all something that we built ourselves.
Definitely.
We didn't steal that from Emerald. So I think I always feel a little bit hesitant when people say, "Oh yeah, we just copied Emerald wholesale," because by copying Emerald wholesale, what we really did is we used the same play style, which is heavy on cheese, heavy on maxes and sunderers, things that we knew in 2014 that we should be doing that we just weren't.
Yep. I think we integrated our Air Force a lot better than probably any other server apart from Cobalt.
Yeah, we can come back to that in a bit when we just get on to talking like what the kind of the playstyle was actually during the tournament matches. What I'd like to go on now, if it's okay with you guys, is just kind of like the run up to the tournament. So we've established that pretty much the big difference between 2014 and 2015 was the differences in how we selected the teams and the new force structures that we tried to go to. So if it's okay with you guys, we'll just have a quick look on how that actually came to be. So I think our first meeting was I think it was way back in June, wasn't it? That's when we actually, I think that's when the tournament was announced. And we had that nice little meeting where we selected force commanders, and that's while the drama intentions were still running quite high. So, all right, go ahead, Naps.
I think the run up to the Connery game was, from my perspective, an absolute nightmare because obviously there'd been a lot of drama. There'd been so much time spent trying to devise, Miller's selection rules, because I think at that point all the servers were sort of submitting the way they were going to select the teams to PSB and so on, and morale was very, very low. And it's worse, I think we had about something in the range of 170 players signed up. Some outfits had decided that we didn't really want to play, which is fine, and, no problem. But from the perspective of actually participating, things were actually very worrying. And originally I was going to say, I'm going to be the Connery Force Commander, but at that point in time I was thinking, I'm not going to Force Command this game with the situation as it is, because shortage of platoon leaders, shortage of players in general. And I think it took a lot of work and from people in the community to try and convince outfits to come back and give it one last shot. And eventually we got a team. I think probably the thing with the Connery game was the game itself wasn't that important. There's nothing, I think, that greatly impacted Miller. I mean, we got 100%, but it was against, a team that quite clearly had been having similar internal problems as us and hadn't weathered the storm as well as us. I think probably the bigger impacts from that game came from the before and after. The before being that we managed to get a team together for it. Obviously, in the aftermath of that game, there's a lot of controversy. I'll call it stacking gate. But it was a grueling process, I think, to get that team. So I was quite relieved after the game that it'd come together.
Are we going to talk about the whole
not into any detail?
It's not worth touching on in too much detail, I think, because the wreckage and litter of that still strewn across the past pages of Reddit. It's probably better to paint it in broad strokes. I
think there was the issue I think we had as a server was that we'd spent a lot of time talking, arguing amongst ourselves, and also a hell of a lot of input from PSP reps in terms of what a fair selection process was that met the fairness doctrine. And we were, there was a hell of a lot of people who were extremely vocal about the fact that the fairness doctrine wasn't, it was just so vague. There was no way of actually structuring a set of rules around it.
The ironic thing with the
and
fairness,
we eventually got something that could work, that we were happy with, that PSP were happy with, except and so on and so forth. But in post Connery match, all the drama, fairness doctrine went out the window and it changed. But we still used that selection process throughout the entire round robin stage. Yeah. We still held ourselves to the fact that no outfit could play more than 3 matches. Everyone would get at least 1 match. And we held ourselves to that because I think for us that was we've bled to have this system in place. It works. We're going to keep on using it.
I think that, like, to almost finish off the fairness doctrine, I think the main issue was that obviously it wasn't very well. It's very, very vague statement, and I'd had discussions with before. I said it's very vague and it's down to interpretation, and that's the problem. It's ultimately our interpretation was different to theirs, and I think we should leave it at that, really. But I think the whole drama fallout, it could have gone 2 ways. It could have ripped Miller apart, or it could have, or did what it did, which is basically put the team together. It kind of, sort of siege mentality. Everyone kind of felt that everyone hated Miller. A lot of us certainly felt that way, and everyone kind of bunkered down.
So that could be like the last point relating to this drama. Then, like, so as you said, it could have gone 2 ways. It ripped us apart or brought us together. Like, you can kind of say a lot of the convincing from. I know Shrikity did a lot of convincing before the match. I know others did as well, but unfortunately I don't know their names. So you can say that kind of started it, but then as like a server, I don't think we actually, from my perspective, we didn't come really together as a server until after that drama started. Which I think indirectly, although it was a pain in the arse, it might have done us a couple of favours. Would you guys agree with that?
Definitely.
I think that is probably in terms of from the Miller point of view, the biggest thing that came out of all the drama there, aside from the revised and in my opinion much more sensible rule set, was that it basically got people to put down the axe they'd been holding against other chunks of the community. Suddenly it wasn't casual side versus elite side, it was everyone's out for Miller. We think everything we've done's been above board, and yet people are really gunning for us. And as Angeh said, I think that definitely is a sort of siege mentality there.
Yeah.
And it very much brought people together.
Whole, quote unquote fuck Emerald was used a lot on private subreddit.
Yeah, there was no need to kind of pander and be popular anymore, because we were never going to recover from the court of public opinion. So we just got on with winning the tournament, which is what we wanted to do. But now we wanted to do it because not only did we want to win a tournament, we wanted to prove to everyone that we were justifiably, a 100% team.
So now we talked about what led up to the tournament and what kind of brought Miller together. So what we'll do, if you guys are up for it, we'll take the Briggs match on Hossin as an example of what kind of went into every game from start to finish. So from like the day after pretty much the Connery game, excluding the drama that was there, kind of like how he built the teams and put a plan together, assigned lanes and all that. So Napoleon, I'm going to ask you to explain it, if that's alright, because I saw your thread on Miller Planetside and the AMA thread, and thought it was quite interesting to regurgitate here. So if it's okay with you, could you talk us through the process of kind of making a roster, kind of making our team rosters for each game?
I can talk you through sort of what my sort of process is. I think RTiger's might slightly differ, it might not, but let me just have a think. Basically, at the start, they'll start with the roster, and so I'd always sort of pick the roster in the fashion of you start from top to bottom. So the first thing would be to identify, how many platoons are we going to need for this game, and then so let's say 6 platoons. So I'd identify 6 platoon leaders, and that would basically automatically select the outfits they're in, and then I'd work my way through the platoons, ideally filling them out with outfits that they've historically played a lot with, who got on very well. Generally, that didn't always fill out a platoon completely, so you'd have the gaps here and there in which you'd have a core team almost, and then you'd rotate for each game an additional round of outfits that hadn't had a chance to play yet into the team. And so once that was done, the next thing would be to look at the lanes and work out, where the lanes were going to be, and then it would be to allocate those platoons to those lanes. So generally, I think the best place for the really aggressive platoons, the ones that filled with whatever you want to call it, the MLG fits, or stacked platoons, I'd always vouch for them
the
going.
lane smashes. Guys who can just sit on a lane and take the entire lane and you don't have to worry about it too much.
That's very much it, and these sort of platoons would vouch for or advocate for going on the lanes where there's not much in the way of speed bumps, so there's not too many big 3-point bases that are real meat grinders. They're the single lanes, sometimes or quite often on the edges of the map, where there's just a lot of sort of 4-minute base caps that if they're 50-50 fights, that platoon's probably going to win. And then for less experienced platoons, or maybe platoons that weren't quite so aggressive, and put them in places where if you weren't sure how they're going to perform, you stick them on lanes where if they get into trouble, there's a good defensive bulwark that won't lead to a collapse, but also you'd give them perhaps not very favorably, but you'd give them the sort of bases that you weren't likely to get through, or they're going to be prolonged sieges and take a long time to grind down. And I think over the matches, that system seemed to me to work quite well. And then obviously once the lanes are all selected, then it is a case of writing up the sort of strategy document that sort of set the tone for how we intended the course of the game to go, and to plan for contingencies if we got into trouble, so that we weren't just sort of collapsing without a clear idea of what we're going to do to right the situation. And then we plan the opening moves. I think opening moves was something Miller's always looked at very carefully, and I think over the course of the tournament, whether by potentially sometimes by a bit of luck or sometimes by the opponents making mistakes, we've always sort of come out pretty well in the opening moves, and get the bases we wanted to get. And I think that's always been the sort of historic Miller trait in terms of what we do well. Don't know if RTiger's got anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think for me when we started the tournament, we did a big sign-up document, and that document included all the outfits who wanted to take part, what members they could bring, who they had any squad platoon leaders, and who they liked playing with. And from that, we'd make this big spreadsheet filled out for the entire tournament, and it's just got all the information you need to know about every outfit playing. And from that, we built platoons to start with for the first game, and from that, we kind of used those platoons throughout the tournament where we could. It followed. We brought in a lot of information from the kind of the friendly fights earlier in the year, and used that as well to help form platoons. And then once you've got your platoon lists, once you know who's going to be where, I mean, for me, the center of the map is normally where I put the best platoon leaders because it's so much chaos in the center of the map. You've got platoons left, right, and center. You've got just chaos normally is king in the center of the map. And you get the airball over the top of you all the time. So for me, it's always like put the strong people in the center, put the people who can push lanes on the outsides, and and then fill in the gaps where you need to.
I think go back to what I say about the flanks. I think experience has shown that you can't really have like weak outfits or weak platoons on the outside of the map, because it's especially like in our mission and stuff like that. It's very hard to reinforce it. Yeah, it's working.
Yeah, I mean, just check out the Cobalt game we played against them.
Yeah.
Earlier before the tournament started, where one of their west flank just completely collapsed, and we walked over. We almost touched their warp gate.
And then the same thing happened in the tournament game they had against Briggs. Again, exactly. The west flank completely collapsed again.
That's the thing, like, conversely, it's almost an argument to put like maybe your strongest platoon out there because if you put your strongest platoon out there, they're either going to make massive advances down their flank, or they're going to pull in a lot more forces and it pulls forces from elsewhere to reinforce it, and it makes it hold somewhere else.
There are other ways of doing it, but that was generally the approach that was taken.
I think it's other servers knew that what we're doing, but the thing is, if you got like, for example, INI down one flank and MCY down another flank, yeah, because if you got outfits of that caliber, you either had to put your best outfits out there to counter them, which pulls them away from center, or you had to allocate more forces out there, which pulls them away from other bases. And it's a very good thing we had. We probably had arguably more stronger outfits of that tier than any other server. I mean, every server has a Das Ball, for example, or AC, but we have MCY, INI, Red October.
So we talked quite a bit now about how we pick the teams, how we picked our force structure. What we haven't really touched on is some of that. A lot of people brought up as the reason we won. And the question I have now is, as a faction choice, why did we prefer NC as a faction? I know from speaking with Seb, they preferred the air hammer because it had kind of a mixed air-to-air and air-to-ground capability. But in your opinion, guys, is there anything more to do with that?
I definitely think, I think in terms of people who benefited the most from playing NC, it was probably our air platoon. And part of that's probably the air hammer because it's such a dual-purpose weapon. If you're playing TR and you want to use the Banshee, then you're not going to be so good air-to-air, whereas the air hammer you can do really well in air-to-air, and you can also do ground pounding very well. So the air, that was very helpful, I think, for them, and it really upped their effectiveness.
Yep.
So obviously on the ground, NC maxes can be quite good. I don't necessarily believe that factions played as big a role as people think, but any little advantage you get is always a bonus.
Definitely. I mean, I think before the whole .75 thing changed, like NC weaponry in the hands of players, like I'm talking about like non-match weapons, in the hands of players, like skilled players, is arguably the best in the game. For skilled players, and I think a lot of our top tier outfits definitely appreciated playing with like the Anchor and the top, the Cyclone, all the NC weaponry. And I think that, I think a lot of outfits play NC, and a lot of the top guys were happy playing NC. I think everyone's happy playing NC. .75 wasn't as much a big deal as everything else, but yeah, and I think NC was psychological as well, especially against Emerald. I think Emerald, they had bad experience with their hammer in the first meeting in the group stage, and I think you saw the whole drama of the coin toss.
No, I think we're only going to stick with one drama today, mate. That's all we're going to say.
I firmly believe that a large part of that was the fact that they didn't get NC because they had a really bad experience playing it last time, and they don't want to play it again. So I think it's psychological as well.
So, as we've already discussed, then a big role that the Force Commander has to do for each match is the actual planning stage of it, long before the game begins. We had to get it done pretty quickly, but on average, how long did it take to do the planning for each game?
Connery game, I think, due to the difficulties in the run-up, there's a lot of revising that plan. Probably looking at more of a week or more. But I think we got faster at doing it over the tournament, something definitely I felt. And towards the end of the tournament, we were sort of able to churn out a decent plan in just, a day or two, and it was more just finding the time to write it.
In the end, then, that became quite advantageous for us, didn't it? Because that allowed basically the plan to be passed down to the platoon leads earlier.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
I think the only match where we didn't, all the Hossen plans for me were, very easy. Because Hossen's just for me, it's my favourite continent to fight on. I've led on it itself, and it's just kind of, you know all the ways of playing on it. But I think for the final match, we spent 2 different sessions with the platoon leaders working out how we wanted to play the opening. Like, the platoons are always very easy to slot into place, but the opening is, it's where you can win or lose a game very easily. And so we put a lot of time into that final opening moves. And I think it changed 2 or 3 times. What we were going to do, our opening moves, changed quite drastically. Because, based on different, feelings of, do we prioritize this or do we prioritize that? I think
a lot of talk about prioritizing Bastion or a split.
Yeah, it was that. It was basically previously we knew that like against Connery managed to take the Bastion from us by just setting up really heavily, and the question was, do you want to try and contest at the Bastion? But if you get kicked off, then you wasted a lot of time. So and we in the end we decided, let's go hard at the Bastion at the start, and get it. And that gives us a much better platform as the South Warp Gate. I mean, that, for me, I prefer the Bastion because it's an attacking position, whereas I think Split Peak is much more of a defensive position for the South Warp Gate. It's, if you lose it, you're screwed. But you can't, you can push from it, but you can't win the game from it, if that makes sense.
Having said that, I mean, this is where, there's a lot of back and forth discussion between FCs and the platoon leads. The Split Peak and SNA, that they offer up a lot of lanes that you can push quite easily and gobble up territory. So, and I think probably something we found quite helpful was, when we get the platoon leads in for feedback on the plan, and they'll often come at things from a very different perspective. So at the very least, you'll get your ideas challenged and have to sort of try and argue for them. And then if you're not certain, you're not always certain about your ideas, and sometimes the platoon leads will come out with stuff that you think, hey, that's actually a really good idea, and this is better than what's been written in the plan. And so you go through that sort of little iteration phase where you get feedback and critique from some very smart guys, and it definitely helps in sort of strengthening the weak points.
And that, kid, is what a Millimene Monday meeting is.
Yeah,
they're glorious. So we talked about now what happened kind of before a game that NFC does. Let's have a look at NFC's role during a game. The first thing I'd like to talk about is like kind of our force and command structure. Is there anything like that's different between ours, like you guys know, like anything different between our structure and the structure from, say, Cobalt or Connery?
I think on the command level, the big difference between us and any other server is that we've got 2 people sat in the command room. I don't think there's any other servers that do that generally, and that makes a huge difference to the way you can command a match and the information that you have available to you. So Napoleon will quite regularly just goes into fights and has a look around. And for me, it's if there's a big fight, I will go there and I will look at the points, and I will, because if there's there's 2 or 3 platoons there, the platoon leaders already have their hands tied up looking after their own platoon on a map, let alone trying to help, trying to coordinate with other platoons. That's your job. Your job is to go there and make the calls, and not and to be clever enough to make the calls and not say grenade the point room when you're already in the point room. I mean, no, but I mean it's you joke about it, but that is kind of like you need to know the level of what you can and can't do. Say calling charge the room now, go go go, it's fine. But calling grenade the room
when you can't even
when you
see
should
the
know
room.
that people are in the room already, that's that's what your force commander's job is in a major kind of critical engagements in my eyes.
Yeah, so when it's a fight actually on the ground, is like kind of like a glorified platoon.
More like
whereas where each squad is a platoon in size.
I mean, I'll say like the force commander is almost acting like an area commander. He's assessing the area of conflict and making decisions. It's very very hard to see the whole picture as a platoon leader, especially you got to deal with the whole. It's messy. It's very easy to have like you almost have almost like a senior platoon leader saying, "Okay, we're doing this, guys," basically, and it works very well. That's one of the I know from like seeing Halo lead. He had to do it a couple of times. It does benefit seeing what's going on there, because you need to know. You can't possibly know what's going on there from the population alone. Are they spawn cammed? Are they on? Are they on the points? You don't know.
I think they having the force commander and the assistant force commander has another benefit in that some of these games can be very stressful and quite mentally fatiguing, and the worst ones for that are the ones where it's almost tied through the opening on territory, or both sides are playing well and neither side's necessarily getting the momentum going yet, and it's a continuous back and forth, and those can be quite draining. So it's always useful to have somebody you can bounce your ideas off, or just take up some of the strain so you can look ahead a bit without having to worry about the minutiae of little bases here and there. I feel like sometimes I get the impression that maybe the opposing force commanders or force commanders in other games, when they've been there all alone, you can almost feel that maybe they're getting a bit tired. They're not thinking clearly. They're starting to make little mistakes in their calls.
Yep.
And I think that's where having the assistant can really sort of say, hey, we're slipping here a bit.
I absolutely agree with you on that, mate. It is really good to have. Like, I remember back in it was the Emerald Round Robin game. You and I were force commanding that one, and we did actually get rid of a lot of ideas that were filtered out during the game. Like, another thing I want to mention about that was, like, I think during that you said you kind of usurped my command during that, but you were being a lot more responsive with giving orders than I was. I think what we ended up doing in that game, we actually kind of divided the workload with that, and you were kind of looking at the kind of regional stuff, and that allowed me the opportunity to kind of look 5, 10, 15 minutes like ahead of what was going on in the game, so we can plan for that, which I think really relieving to be able to do that, and allowed us to actually plan
definitely,
yeah,
like that game was quite an intensive opener, so I think in those conditions it's quite easy to get fixated on the very very short term in just moving your platoons about, but I think that game was very interesting in terms of being the fact that I think that's where not only did we catch up to Emerald, but we finally surpassed them, and it was the real litmus test, so to speak, of everything we'd been doing. And, it's a case of, in my eyes, can we beat Emerald at their own game here? And we did, which was, I think, perhaps underappreciated, but was a massive morale boost for us going into the finals, because all of a sudden Emerald's just been clobbered out of the blue. They were not expecting it, and now they have to fight us again in the finals, and it puts that element of doubt. Whereas Miller it's got that massive confidence boost. So we're going to be more aggressive, more confident, and generally just willing to really go for it. And I think maybe I got the impression that maybe Emerald seemed a bit demoralized in the run up to the game and during the game. So it led, I think, to some interesting calls during the match, and perhaps rather ironically and fittingly, the final was very much similar in some respects to the Connery game, where the North Warpgate side decides to make that big push for AFC and then gets clobbered at Crux and cut off.
Yeah.
One thing I did notice after the tournament was finished, so we're just going to kind of move from the command level now down to the platoon league level, was that a lot of the other servers seem to have had this communication structure where they would actually have these kind of segments of these pairs or triplets of platoons where they would work together in their own kind of comms level, whereas ours was very it was kind of like command chat in game where we just have all the platoon leads in the one channel, and I think that quite benefited us. But I wanted to hear what you guys think about that, because it can get pretty hectic at times.
Definitely, I think definitely in terms of command chatter, especially in the more frantic moments, you'll have about 6 or 7 people all sort of yabbering, but because of platoon leads and the force commands, we all know each other's voice. You get to the point where maybe with the help of, say, the crosstalk plugin, you filter it all out, and so what you end up with is a very, very efficient and quick transfer of information, whereas honestly I don't know the full extent of the sort of Emerald's detachment system or the very specifics of how it works, but having watched the replays of the force commanders and stuff, I question how much the sort of detachment system with everyone operating in their own little bracket sort of works, because to me that's the sort of thing that encourages people to become sort of very target fixated and lose sort of oversight of knowledge of what's going on the rest of the map, whereas with our system it's not always I can't remember the word, but a guy on the east can know what's going on for a platoon leader on the west. That's not always useful information for him, and if it's not, I think you can generally just filter it out. But it leads, I think, to a very good information picture of what's going on for everyone. And then if platoon leads get into trouble, it's very easy for somebody to say on their own initiative, I've got forces free, I'm going to send them here to help you.
Yep. I think as well it also allows, particularly within let's say, let's use like a lane example, the eastern lane and ambush. If you've got 2 platoons there, it allows for very, very quick bouncing between lanes. So Indy could come across and bounce into our lane, cap a base, and then we go bounce back. Bounce across. It allows for a lot better taking opportunities. Okay, Indy can look at the map and say, okay, this last platoon is taking us down to a minute. Let's drop on it. It allows people to move and take opportunities, and also look at the Crux move as well. I bet you a lot of platoon leaders were looking at that as well. And the fact that everyone got there so quickly was kind of testament to that everyone saw an opportunity, everyone took it, everyone kind of knew what was going to happen or what could happen. And then when Tiger said to do it, I think everyone knew it was going to happen anyway, so they're already ready to go. We were there very quickly, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, on that particular move, we'd already got NC Arsenal down quite low. So I think at that stage we all knew that one of those moves was coming. It was just when we decided to go for it. I think the detachment system that Emerald uses is probably the best example of the most prominently known example of another way of doing it. And I think it's an answer to the question of how do you deal with lots of platoons and platoons that need to work together. But like I think it's been said, I don't think it actually. I think it solves the problem, but at the same time it creates another problem. Whereas we've just decided to go with, we know our comms are going to be busy and cluttered and all the rest of it, but we can live through that, and we'll be better for it.
I think
Put
as
some more
well.
pressure on the platoon leaders, but then again, I don't think the detachment system puts less pressure on a platoon leader, because then you have an extra set of comms to deal with.
Exactly.
It's almost worse.
Like, regarding our comm structure that we use for platoon leads, back in 2014, one of the things we saw quite a lot was that the air platoon got blamed a lot for a lot of the losses. Since then, we've added basically a dedicated air liaison that sits in the Miller platoon channels, which allows Seb, our air commander, to focus on what the air's doing, and he'll still have a direct line to the force commanders if we need the strategic planning doing. But what do you guys think about the addition of the air liaison? Do you think we obviously know it was really beneficial to have because we saw dramatic improvement, but I want to hear you guys' thoughts on it.
I think like the whole liaison officer of the air platoon really made a difference with our air platoon, because the air platoon leader, obviously he's got to worry about the fights and all that sort of thing. It's very hard for him to like deal with everything, like lead the platoon, and like having someone to like basically do it all for him and allow him to focus on the fights. Someone to put waypoints down, someone to do this and that, and let Tiger know what's going on. It saves him having to like talk to like listen to all the communication. He needs to know it, but he doesn't need to like deal with it.
And again, this is all stuff we tested out pre-tournament, and we all worked out how it would work, and we tried different people in the air liaison role. And the reason Ulysses was such a good person for the job was because in the 2014 tournament he was a force commander.
It wasn't the tournament, but in 2014.
In 2014, yeah. So he was one of the first people who force commanded for, I think the first person actually to force command for Miller. And then he was the second in line to play Continental Service Smash in command. So he had a lot. He knew what the force commander was doing. He knew what the platoon leaders would be doing because he platoon led as well. So he had all of the experience needed to understand what other people's perspectives were. And I think we tried one or two times with different people, and it didn't always work as well. But I think, so that was again stuff we just tried out pre-tournament. We tried new ideas and we said, yeah, that works. Let's do it. Let's bring it into the tournament.
I think that liaison sort of role was like about the time when our air platoon started getting extremely vicious and extremely well integrated with providing close air support to platoons, because the platoons always know now what the air platoon is doing. So they say, we could do some air support. Ulysses can say, air's engaged with enemy air and can't help you, and say, we'll be there 20 seconds, and it allows for so much more coordination. And I think probably the best example of that is the game against Emerald on Hossin, because our air absolutely slaughtered everything there, and I think it's probably one of the most vicious sort of poundings our air force has ever delivered.
After every game, we used to see a lot of salt and a lot of blame go to the air platoon for a lot of losses, kind of like a scapegoat. Do you guys think that introducing the air liaison into the kind of the actual platoon communication structure actually helped to alleviate some of that, alleviate and get rid of a lot of that salt directed to the air platoon?
Oh, I remember the aftermath of the Matheson game, which I think was Miller's first large-scale server smash, well, certainly on this scale, and the air platoon, I think, basically mopped the floor with Matheson's air, but we had a lot of trouble linking that in with what the ground were doing, so it wasn't quite as effective. And then I think people, quite wrongly in my opinion, basically turned the air platoon for that game into the scapegoat for the loss. And then for the next game along, it was all, we don't need Matheson didn't need so I think we turned up to the game against Cobalt with like 2 squads of air, and Cobalt by that point were really starting to develop a very nasty air force, and their air platoon clobbered our 2 little squads of air, and then proceeded to farm Miller back to the warp gate. And I still have terrible memories of that game, of 2 hours of getting rocket podded in open bases. It was not pleasant.
So really, our air platoon, and our air force, and well, our entire force in general has come such a long way since those days of getting absolutely pummeled.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So before we move on to the last topic, then, is there anything you guys would just quickly like to cover? We're just going to go on to what was different between the finals and the semi-finals.
I don't think so.
All right. So last thing then. So what was the difference? Yeah, for you guys, because I wasn't involved in the organisation of it, obviously. But what was the difference for you guys between the setting up setting up the rosters for the semi-final and the actual round robin?
I think the team selection wise, obviously in the round robin stage, everyone who properly signed up has to be given a sort of game, given a decent amount of players. So there's always that sort of rotation of outfits through the team for each game. But then, so the obvious conclusion there being that once we're into the semi-finals and the finals, it was less about inclusion and more about fielding the best teams we had. And now that wasn't always necessarily purely on the basis of skill. It was also how well outfits could work well together, and that side of things as well. And so
yeah, I mean,
I think
before we selected anyone for the semi-final, we got all of the platoon leaders and a few squad leaders just to give us feedback and just say, how did the squads and outfits that you played with do? Were they any good when it came to being on the field? Did they do the preparation work? Because we knew that we were going to have to put a lot of work in for the semi-final and the final, and we got a lot of feedback. And there were a number of outfits that we thought, okay, yeah, these guys are a shoo-in, and there were a number of outfits who we thought they probably won't play. And based on that feedback, based on kind of their peer review almost, people our opinions were changed, and some outfits got included, and other outfits kind of got relegated. So it wasn't just a arbitrary, this is who me and RTiger and Napoleon think are worthy of playing in the finals. It was based on how did these people actually perform in the past matches. And some people did had tough games, and others maybe played in games that were slightly easier, and so it was you can argue whether that changed kind of coloured our opinion or not, but we tried to create the strongest possible team we could bring.
I remember when we did the Hossen game against Emerald, where we did the platoon structure of 32-man platoons of 2 squads of 12 and one squad of 8. We actually changed that up a bit going into the final and the semi-finals. We actually gave the platoon leads more control about who they brought with rep supervision. Yes, I think that was actually a pretty good addition that we made, because it made that everyone got their own preference.
We used the 32-man sort of platoons against Emerald on Hossen, and then feedback what was like people wanted a bit more flexibility in their squad size. So generally, I think we devolved those sorts of decisions to sort of platoon leads and just set the cap at, obviously, PSB rules, no more than 12 from each outfit, and no more than what your platoon's been allocated.
Yeah, I think the two games are quite different. The Hossen game was it's a continent we knew, a warp gate we liked. I mean, we had all the cards for that one in terms of we could choose warp gate and faction, so we could choose map and then either warp gate or faction. which gave us a big kind of hand. Hossin's the most symmetrical continent with that map, so we could happily choose NC and then let Cobalt kind of choose their favoured warp gate, knowing that we would probably be able to win either way, just based on how we perform on Hossin. The Amrish map was a little bit different. We were quite, we weren't sure which map to go, which warp gate to go for and which faction to go for. I mean, we knew it was going to be Amrish because we didn't want to play on Esmir, and we were fairly certain Emerald wouldn't want to play on Hossin, given how we beat them on Hossin previously. So we knew it was going to be Amrish, and then we just had to work out, okay, if we don't get NC, which faction do we choose? It wasn't. I think previously in 2014, it was pretty much a straight choice. You choose BS, you don't bother choosing TR. I think TR is much more viable now, but probably not quite there yet, especially from the air perspective. So we did a lot of work on, our teams changed because the maps are different. They require different levels of, different sized platoons and different numbers of platoons. It boils down to the number of lanes on the map, the forces you have, and kind of how you want to focus your force. Speaking, we found ourselves more often than not against larger air forces. So the Cobalt game on Esmir in the round robin stage, when they brought 6 squads of air, they outpopped us in the air again on Hossin, and I think on Amrish again our air was outpopped by maybe half a squad to a squad. But that ended up giving us more guys on the ground.
Yeah, who was it again that said planes don't cap points? I think that was proven pretty well in those smashes.
Voyarson. Yeah, we know that well.
Was that before or after the tournament final last year?
That was before the final.
Okay.
Air doesn't cap points. No, Roy, but it's obviously you're into the point. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
So we did a AMA thread on the Miller Planetside Reddit just to kind of get some questions for this. Is there anything you guys kind of want to bring up here? I'll, by the way, anyone watching, I'll put a link in the description.
I know there's definitely a couple of questions from some of the Emerald guys about what we thought was doing well and maybe they weren't, but I kind of wrote a big wall of text for that one, so I don't know.
Yeah, it was quite a significant post. I haven't read it all, to be fair. Is there anything you want to bring up, RTiger?
No, I think that's it. I mean, it hasn't just been turning up to 4 games and doing the work. I think that's possibly the misconception a lot of people have about the command team. There's a hell of a lot of background work just to get the right team together, get the plan sorted, get the opening moves done, which I think is something that a lot of other servers neglect. And just making sure that you have a viable team for the entire tournament. This is the victory that we got this last weekend, or the weekend before even, was it was based on a lot of work starting from the end of the 2014 tournament and going from there.
Yeah, there's definitely this misconception that a force commander is an all-powerful being. They're not. They're just a player that's looking at a map, which is kind of why I wanted to make this, because I thought it was important to get this kind of transparency going, so that people actually know what an FC is instead of using it as a scapegoat all the time when you lose a game. That's what always happens. No matter what server you're on, it's not unique to anyone. At the end of the day, it's a team game. There's 240 people in a server smash team. Every one of them needs to be putting work in if they pretty much if they want to win. It is a team effort, and it comes down to how well these players play together, not just down to whoever's leading them.
We're talking to Halo about a conversation. One thing he touched on was the force commander has less of an influence from this time last year to now. It's more about what the forces on the ground do, and I think he's right. I think the force commander, he makes the opening plans, he makes all that sort of thing, but it's generally not the force commander that wins or loses a game. It's what happens on the ground. Like the opening move is critical, and obviously that can win a loss. But we've always been good at opening moves. It's kind of what happened afterwards that let us down. We'd do well in opening moves, and then we wouldn't ram it down their throats. Whereas now, I think the the more preparation the force commanders and the platoon leaders, everyone kind of know what's happening afterwards. Everyone made better decisions. I think the force commanders did do less, but their role was equally important. I think they did less decisions, like big decisions, but they were more involved with like the planning, far more planning than they used to be.
I think at the end of the day, there's probably some truth to the saying that a good team with an average force commander will beat a very average team with a good force commander. In my view, I think platoon needs as much, perhaps not more important than the force commander, as long as the force commander is competent.
Yeah, I think having a good number of platoon leaders, like highly skilled platoon leaders, is really important. I mean, no matter how good a force commander you are, you can't work miracles. You can't, fly around flipping points and killing everybody in the field. You have to rely on your platoon leaders and the people on the ground to do that job. So you can put your team in the best position possible to win, but it's up to them to actually seize that.
I couldn't agree more with you, mate. But yeah, so last thing, and I'll let you go, I promise. So next year, there's talk of some just friendlies coming up. Would you guys be interested in stepping up again to the plate and force commanding for Miller one more time? I'll be honest, I'm kind of thinking about it.
No, I think at the end of the day, it will never be better than this tournament as force commander, or being involved in those command team for those games. Anything after that will be, in my eyes, a sort of a bit of a climb down. But I would very happily come and shoot Planet Mans in future server smashes as a grunt, because it's a bit more relaxing than being force commander.
I think it's dangerous because when you force command, it's an entirely different game. It's not just platoon leading on live. You're not, it's not even coordinating with a few other platoon leads. It's, it's the entire game you have control of almost, and that's a hell of a lot of fun, but it's also a hell of a lot of work and there's a hell of a lot of stress. So maybe, but it depends where Planetside is come 2016. It's definitely good fun. I had the privilege of leading the world record match, which was possibly the toughest of all of the games I've ever played. Because I think, as you know, freeway fights are just horrible. You can't ever win. The only time you win a freeway fight is at the end. You haven't won until the time has run out. Whereas I think two-way games, at least in the current format, are over normally within the first hour. And I think so. It's good fun. It's always challenging, but I mean, it's the amount of work you put in the background. I think this tournament, I spent a hell of a lot of time, most evenings, doing Planetside stuff, but I rarely played the game.
I think I'd like to say, obviously, thanks to you guys, the force commanders. Obviously, you guys did put a lot of time in, and it kind of made what the rep team put in as well worth it. But ultimately, it's thanks to everyone who played for us, everyone who stuck through the hard times, the bad times, and ultimately was part of the Miller team that changed for the better. In the attitude, in working together, it brought us together as a team. Regardless of when we won the final or not, the final was icing on a cake. Winning it was amazing. But even if we hadn't won it, the fact that we came together as a server was what impressed me, and it really was. It's really a server now, and that's the important thing.
I think at the end of the day, it really was absolutely a team effort from the whole Miller community. So many people put so many hours into this thing, whether it's just individual players practicing on live to make sure they show up on the day, able to shoot straight, to the outfit leaders liaising and making sure they're ready, prepared, the platoon needs it. It's like there can't be, in my eyes, a weak link in a Server Smash team. Otherwise, you're likely to lose. So everyone just did their job very well, I think, in the end.
Yeah, definitely. And, I mean, although Seb's not here, I think a huge shout out to him for doing something that none of us have done, which is lead, an element of the team throughout the entire tournament, and probably the largest single element of our team. Yeah, I mean, given that however many platoon leaders we give a break over the tournament and the force commanders, you have to take breaks. The fact that Seb did it throughout the entire tournament it's no mean feat.
That's the thing. I think ultimately we ended a system that rewarded the people that wanted to put the effort in, which is what I think ultimately we pushed for. I think you proved if you were good enough, it didn't matter whether you were Dig or any, you got to play. I mean, who would have thought Dig would have played a start tournament, especially in the final? They stood their heads up and said, "We want to play the final. We want to play," and they proved it. They did very well. And
They put the time and effort in to be prepared.
Exactly. I'm not going to name other attitudes. I'm not going to point a finger at outfits, but certain outfits disappeared off the scene completely because they weren't prepared for the effort. And they're like, "Oh, we want inclusiveness, but we're not prepared to work for it." Well, you can't have both ways. If you put the effort in, you get to play. You saw that. Dick played in the final, and if Dick can play, anyone can put the effort in to play. And then they proved, they got a chance, they did well, and they carried on doing well. They put the effort in, and they proved a lot of people wrong. And they earned the right to be there. I think every alpha that wants to play for Miller could do worse than learn from Dig. Put the attitude they put in. They may not have the best players or whatever, or the best reputation, but they've definitely earned a reputation from that tournament.
Definitely.
Right, I'm afraid we're going to have to call it there, guys. We've covered everything that we were hoping to cover. Thanks a lot for coming on and doing this from the guys. Like I said, I think it's a really good thing to do, just like a nice little thing, looking at kind of how things were organised, which I don't think most people have ever actually seen or heard about. So thanks a lot for coming on, guys, and to you guys that watch this, I hope you found it interesting to watch. All right, thanks again, guys.